Welcome to the third explainer in the series of human consciousness in the context of Indian knowledge systems and modern sciences, specifically titled Elements and Components of Human Consciousness. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're tackling what is quite literally one of the most profound, deeply fascinating mysteries of human existence, which is the architecture of your very own mind. It's a topic that beautifully bridges ancient wisdom with cutting-edge science, and honestly, we have so much incredible ground to cover today.
So let's just dive right into it. I want you to take a second and really think about this. What makes you aware of your own existence right now? Seriously, what is it? Is it the physical feeling of the chair beneath you? Is it the thoughts currently racing through your head as you try to answer the question? Or maybe it's the subtle emotions you're experiencing in this exact moment. This right here is the absolute core of our explainer today. We aren't going to look at consciousness just as some vague, abstract, floaty concept. No, we're looking at it as a highly structured, intricate system. By using a dual lens approach, meaning we're merging the latest cutting-edge insights of modern neuroscience with the profound, millennial-old wisdom of Indian philosophy, we are going to break down exactly what makes you, you.
Here is our roadmap for today. We are going to deconstruct this massive concept layer by layer, starting with a definition, moving into the biological hardware, then the interface of perception, the inner world of memory and thought, and finally, intuition and self-awareness. Let's move to Section 1, Defining Human Consciousness, the Complex Phenomenon. Okay, we have to start with a truly foundational concept, and that is Chaitana. This is the Hindi and Sanskrit term for consciousness. Now, across modern fields like neuroscience and psychology, consciousness is frequently perceived simply as the awareness of one's surroundings and self, basically just a waking state. If you're awake and responding, you're conscious. But as we explore Chaitana through the lens of Indian knowledge systems, we start to see that it's definitely not just a single switch in your brain that gets flipped on or off. It is a highly complex, beautifully multi-layered phenomenon made up of various dynamically interacting elements and components. It encompasses literally everything from your most basic sensory input to the absolute highest realms of spiritual realization. And grasping this complexity, rather than just settling for a basic surface-level definition, is really the only way we can truly understand how subjective experience actually manifests in us as humans. Moving on to Section 2, the functional components, the hardware of consciousness. So, human consciousness actually operates through 4 distinct yet dynamically interacting functional components. Think of these components as the systemic engine of your mind, constantly working together behind the scenes. First up, you have the sensory processing components. These are things like vision, hearing, and touch. These essentially act as the primary interface between the external world and your internal mind, feeding raw data to your brain in milliseconds. Then we have the cognitive components. This includes your attention, language, memory, and problem-solving skills. These are what allow you to comprehend, reason, and actually adapt to all that raw data pouring in. Next are the emotional components, which include empathy and internal regulation. These seamlessly integrate your affective states into your experience and, as we all know, heavily influence your behavior. And finally, tying the whole thing together, you have the neurobiological components, which serve as the actual physiological foundation for all of this to even happen in the first place. When we actually peek under the hood and look at this neurobiological hardware, we see very distinct regions handling very distinct tasks for our consciousness. On one side, we have the limbic system. This regulates our emotions and our memory. You can think of it as the ancient, deeply feeling part of the human brain. On the flip side, we have the cerebral cortex, which manages our higher-order processes like reasoning, logic, and complex decision-making. Your conscious experience right this very second, your ability to listen to my voice, process the meaning of these words, and decide how you feel about this explainer, is the result of a real-time, lightning-fast collaboration between these specific physical structures. The physical brain is quite literally building your subjective experience, actively bridging the gap between raw biology and abstract thought. Let's jump into Section 3, Awareness, Attention, and Perception, the Interface. Now, awareness is frequently regarded by science as the most fundamental aspect of consciousness, right? It's your capacity to perceive and feel stimuli, whether that's internal thoughts or external sensations. But in Vedanta, which is a major, highly influential branch of Indian philosophy, awareness goes far, far beyond simple biological sensing. It is directly associated with the Atman, the individual soul. The Atman is considered the absolute foundation of your conscious experience. So in the grand context of Chaitana, awareness encompasses a profoundly deep spiritual understanding. It is the recognition of an inseparable connection between your individual self and universal consciousness. It suggests that our most basic, core awareness, ties us directly to the very fabric of the universe itself, which is just a staggering shift in perspective when you really think about it. But here's the thing, awareness alone isn't quite enough. It needs direction. Because without attention, the sheer unimaginable multitude of simultaneous sensory inputs and internal thoughts would completely overwhelm your consciousness. Your brain would just short circuit. Attention is the critical filtering process. It is exactly how consciousness selectively concentrates on specific stimuli while completely tuning out all the background noise. In Indian philosophical practices, mastering this filter is absolutely paramount. For instance, in yoga, the practice of dharana necessitates deeply focused, entirely unwavering attention. Refining this laser-focused nature of attention is exactly what allows practitioners to ascend to much more profound meditational states. It moves them past daily mental clutter and vastly enhances the absolute clarity and depth of their conscious experiences.
Now, this focused attention builds directly into what we call perception, and according to Samkhya and yoga philosophy, there is a very specific sequential flow to this, utilizing the inner instrument known as the antikaran. It goes like this. Step 1 is sensory input. That's the raw data from the physical world hitting your physical senses. Step 2 is the manas, or the mind, which catches and interprets that initial sensory stimulus. Step 3 is the buddhi, the intellect, which steps in to analyze and bring profound comprehension to that data. And finally, step 4 is the ahamkara, the ego, which ties that synthesized experience directly back to your own deeply held sense of personal identity. So it's this wonderfully detailed progression showing exactly how raw, meaningless data becomes a highly personal, conscious experience.
But, and this is a massive but, here is where it gets incredibly fascinating. Let's talk about the concept of Maya in Advaita Vedanta. Scientifically speaking, perception is essentially just the brain converting sensory information into a coherent reality. But Maya tells us that this perception can actually be an illusion. It tells us it is an illusion that actively distorts pure consciousness, causing us to perceive a separated, fragmented reality that feels totally distinct from Brahman, which is ultimate reality. This concept is a huge paradigm shift because it reminds us that our perception doesn't just neatly organize the world for us. It influences, colors, and sometimes completely obscures the true, unified content of our conscious awareness. Next up, Section 4, Memory, Thought, and Emotion, the Inner World. All right, let's talk about memory. Memory is obviously critical because it ensures the continuity and coherence of our conscious experience over time. Without it, you simply wouldn't have a personal identity. Every single second would be a blank slate. But I want you to notice the stark contrast here between functional and spiritual memory. Functional memory is what modern psychology often focuses on, right? It's recollecting past events, accumulating knowledge, and applying that knowledge to present circumstances. Spiritual memory, however, as viewed in Indian philosophies, is something much deeper. It isn't just about recalling sensory experiences or remembering facts for a test. It's about recollecting the self's true nature. In spiritual practices like meditation, memory is utilized to keep your consciousness constantly aligned with higher awareness, continually recalling your overarching spiritual objective amidst all the chaos and noise of daily life. Then we have thought. Thought is the fundamental element responsible for the mental processes that let us analyze, reason, plan, and solve our daily problems. As we mentioned just a minute ago with Samkhya philosophy, thought is a function of the manas, the mind. However, while thoughts are highly useful tools for navigating life, they can also severely clutter our consciousness, leading to massive amounts of anxiety and distraction. In practices like yoga and Buddhism, the ultimate goal is actually to regulate and calm the ceaseless flow of these thoughts. By minimizing the impact of distracting, involuntary thoughts through dedicated meditation, the mind can achieve what is called samadhi. And samadhi isn't just a lack of thought. It is a profoundly clear, deeply tranquil, and transcendent state of consciousness, where you experience reality completely free from the constant, exhausting chatter of the mind. And, of course, we have to add emotions into the mix. Emotions are massive drivers of the conscious experience. They directly influence how we perceive the world around us and profoundly affect our physiological states. Emotions have the power to either deeply enhance our reality with feelings of expansive joy or completely obscure our consciousness with anger, anxiety, or fear. But what I absolutely love here is how this is handled in Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the path of devotion. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't ask you to just suppress or artificially eliminate your human emotions. Rather, it reroutes them. It takes those powerful, deeply personal emotions and directs them entirely toward a higher objective, devotion to the divine. This brilliant framework basically transforms everyday, messy feelings into an incredible tool for expanded consciousness and profound spiritual development. Finally, we reach Section 5, Intuition and Self-Awareness, the highest state. Let's define intuition in this context. We aren't just talking about a basic gut feeling here. We are talking about comprehending an object or a situation entirely without the necessity of conscious step-by-step reasoning. It is the sudden, spontaneous emergence of deep knowledge. In the traditions of Tantra and Vedanta, intuition is regarded as a highly superior function of consciousness. It arises not from stressful overthinking or logic puzzles, but from a state of purified awareness that is completely unimpeded by intellectual distractions or the demands of the ego. And how do you access it? Well, it's accessed through disciplined spiritual practices like meditation and pranayama, which allow individuals to tap into much deeper levels of consciousness and seamlessly align with non-rational universal knowledge. And finally, we arrive at self-awareness. This is the ultimate acknowledgement of your own existence and your individuality. This is what truly sets humans apart from other, more instinctive forms of life. Self-awareness is what actually allows you to pause and evaluate the moral and ethical ramifications of your actions. For instance, when you stop yourself from lashing out in anger because you recognize exactly how it will affect someone else, that right there is self-awareness in action. It is the capacity to deeply self-reflect, to judge our own character, and it represents a remarkably advanced aspect of consciousness that significantly elevates the human experience way above mere biological survival. Ultimately, all of this mapping of the mind leads us to a crucial realization, which is captured perfectly in this idea. Self-awareness is a prerequisite for realizing the Atman, the authentic self that transcends the body, mind, and ego, leading to liberation or moksha. I really want you to let that sink in for a moment. In Indian thought, particularly in Vedanta and yoga, merely recognizing your own psychological existence isn't the final goal. It is only the prerequisite. It's just the starting line. Realizing this true, authentic self is the master key to dissolving that illusion of separateness we talked about earlier with Maya. By transcending the mind and the ego entirely, one can ultimately attain moksha, which is true, absolute spiritual liberation. Which brings us to a final, provocative thought to end our explainer today. I want you to really ponder this. If your thoughts and your emotions are just functional elements, if your memory and perception are basically just biological components filtering data, then who is the you that is observing them right now? Who is the watcher standing behind the mind? It's a profound, completely paradigm-shifting question that challenges literally everything we think we know about our own identity. And I truly hope it leaves you eager to explore the incredible depths of your own Atman. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible deep dive into the architecture of your own mind. If you found this explainer valuable and it gave you something to think about, please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, especially if you figured out who the you observing your thoughts really is. Sharing this with a curious friend is the best way to help us keep creating deep dives just like this one. See you next time.